Hello everyone and welcome to Tromp Entertainment. I'm Dan and today I'm going to be talking about screenwriting and how I got into it. What the screenwriter does, some of my favourite films and television shows, why representation and accessibility in television film are so important and lacking in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Screenwriting is something I've loved for a long time because films and television shows make people laugh, cry and think and escape into different worlds. Behind every great movie or television series is a writer creating the story, the characters and all the moments people remember for years. So first, to start by talking about how I became interested in screenwriting and storytelling. I first got into screenwriting when I was around 7 years old. I used to make little home movies and write stories for them because I loved using my imagination and creating adventures. One of the biggest things that inspired me was watching Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, at the cinema. That was actually my favourite Star Wars film growing up, and as I remember being amazed by the special effects, the action and the storytelling. It made me realise how powerful films could be. The first thing I ever wrote was a script for a family home movie about a spy agency. It was fun, but I loved creating the characters and thinking about what would happen next in the story. Since then, I've been interested in films, television shows and comedy, and learning about what happens behind the scenes. I enjoy seeing how stories are built and how every character has a purpose within the plot. Watching films and creating my own stories made me curious about what screenwriting actually involves, because there is a lot more to it than people might realize. A lot of people think screenwriting is simply writing dialogue, but it's actually much more than that. Screenwriting is a form of writing used for films, television shows, stage productions, video games, cartoons, and animation. A screenwriter creates a story, develops a character, and decides how everything connects together. One of the most important parts of writing is creating believable characters and giving them proper backstories. Every character needs their own personality, motivations, and relationships with the people around them. Writers have to think carefully about the plot and how scenes flow from one moment to the next. For me, the hardest part of writing is dealing with writer's block. Some ideas come naturally, and other times your mind just goes blank. But my favorite part is getting inspiration, because ideas can come from almost anywhere. Sometimes it's a funny conversation, sometimes you hear it in everyday life, or a moment from another film or television show that sparks a new idea. And speaking of inspiration, one of the biggest influences on my writing style has always been comedy and famous movie dialogues. Comedy is probably my favorite genre to write because it's fun and creative. I enjoy taking inspiration from sitcoms and family comedy films, especially American television shows. A lot of iconic lines from film and dialogue have become part of everyday conversations because the writing was so memorable. People will still say things like, "Great Scott!" from Back to the Future. "I have a bad feeling about this" from Star Wars, and "Challenge Accepted" from How I Met Your Mother. Other famous lines like "I'll be back" from The Terminator, "How you doing?" from Friends are still recognized all over the world. Even classic British comedy has memorable catchphrases like "Lovely Jubbly" from Only Fools and Horses. I think great comedy writing works because it feels natural and relatable. Sometimes the funniest moment comes from simple everyday conversations that audiences recognize from real life. A lot of the film and television shows I enjoy have inspired the way I think about storytelling and comedy, so I thought I'd share some of my personal favorites. Some of my favorite films and television shows have inspired me creatively over the years. I've always loved E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Back to the Future because they mix emotion, adventure, and humor so well. I'm also a big fan of shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, How I Met Your Mother, Star Trek, and The Goldbergs. What I enjoy the most about these shows and films is their strong characters and storytelling. The best stories are the ones where the audience feels connected to the people on screen. But while there are so many amazing films and television shows out there, I also think it's important to talk about who gets represented on screen and who gets opportunities behind the scenes. Something that's really important to me is accessibility and representation in television and film. I think the United Kingdom and Ireland still have a long way to go when it comes to inclusion in the entertainment industry. There are still not enough disabled actors portraying disabled characters, and it creates a lack of representation and inclusion on screen. For many years, disabled characters have also been played by able-bodied actors. Examples include Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man, Eddie Raymond playing Stephen Hawking in The Theory of Everything, and Jamie Foxx portraying Ray Charles in Ray. Critics argue that able-bodied actors take for these roles, disabled actors lose opportunities and representation remains limited. Thankfully, there are some really positive examples of disabled actors being cast authentically. RJ Mitt, who has cerebral palsy just like myself, appeared in Breaking Bad. Millicent Simmons, who is deaf, starred in A Quiet Place, which made American Sign Language and silence a major part of the story. Tony Kotzer also made history with his performance in Coda. I think authentic representation matters because it allows disabled people to tell their own stories and help audiences understand different experiences in a genuine and respectful way. We also need more disabled writers, directors, and producers working behind the scenes in the television and film industries, especially in the United Kingdom and Ireland. I think that links perfectly to my final thought on why screenwriters matters so much to me personally. It's not just about entertainment, it's about creativity, storytelling, representation, and giving people a voice. Great writing can make audience laugh, inspire them, or help them see the world differently. Whether it's comedy, science fiction, adventure, or serious drama, every story has the power to connect with people in different ways. And hopefully the future of television and film will become even more inclusive and representative for everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode on Tromp Entertainment. I'm Dan, and I hope you enjoyed learning more about screenwriting and why film and television representation and inclusion is so important to the disability community. See you next time.